Joining me today is Zack Jonas, who's a bladesmith. So Zack, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So how does one become a bladesmith?
Well, I have had a love of knives ever since I was a kid. I've just always appreciated the aesthetics of them, the functionality. They're one of mankind's oldest tools. Just always loved them. I started collecting when I was 18. Nothing special, just pocket knives. And I've always been an artist. And eventually I found my way into a class at Mass Art in Boston, which I didn't know when I showed up for the first day, but it's taught by one of the best knife makers in the world. And I just fell in love with the class and the practice of it and was completely hooked.
So, well, you know what? Why don't we actually go and see some of making knives at your shop?
Sure, that sounds great. Let's take a tour.
Okay.
Welcome to Tannery Pond Forge in Wilmot, New Hampshire. My name is Zack Jonas. I am a bladesmith and I make custom handmade knives in all shapes and sizes. My most exciting knives are made from Damascus or pattern welded steel, which is made by layering two types of steel together and forging them to produce dramatic and dynamic patterns. As the hammer pounds the metal, the bundle fuses together. What was once 15 separate layers is now a solid block of steel. Some Damascus patterns are simpler than others. Here you can see that I've taken the original bundle of 15 layers and folded it up to 30 layers. The result will be a broad, dramatic, eye-catching pattern. I use a hammer to shape the blade against the anvil, just as blacksmiths have done for centuries before me. Once I've forged the blade to shape, it's time to refine the form. In order to perform the work of a knife, the steel needs to be hardened. I'll heat the blade to almost 1500 degrees, again watching the color, and then thrust it into the quenching oil. When it comes out, the blade will be extremely hard. I'll have to temper the steel over several hours to draw some of that hardness back. This is one of the most exciting stages of the work. Now I get to experience and refine the way the finished knife will actually come to hand. Each knife that leaves my shop has been made by the hand, for the hand, to the very highest of standards. The work is custom from start to finish, and I respond and adapt to each individual part, each unique piece of material, in order to produce heirloom quality works of functional art.
Wow, that's a really complicated process. So a lot goes into it.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's actually, I was talking to a client about this the other day. A bladesmith, a full knife maker from start to finish, is actually kind of a modern construct. 100 years ago, there would have been one guy doing the hammering, and one guy doing the grinding, and one guy doing the wood, and one guy doing the leather, and another guy sharpening it, and another guy polishing it all. So all of the different processes, that's one of the things that I really like about it. I enjoy the variety, and I enjoy, transitioning from the unyielding, slow-moving steel to the wood, which almost feels therapeutic when I get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, you work hard on the metal,
yep,
and you put that same amount of effort in the wood, and it's almost gone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the most complicated piece that somebody's ever asked you to create?
Well, the piece was actually 5 pieces. It was a project that I recently completed. I have a customer who's got 5 children, and he gave me one word to describe each of his 5 children, and I had to make one knife that represented each word. So I had to design them from a conceptual standpoint as well as a functional standpoint. It's always a knife, it's got to work as a knife, but they had to represent these personalities that he gave me in just a single word each. So that was a very complex project. It took me about 8 months to finish.
All right, now, we may have to edit this out, but could he identify his children?
Yes.
So he could, when you showed him the 5 knives,
yep,
you didn't say who was Jack and who was Johnny,
yep,
who was Jane. It was, here they are?
Yep, he was able to get them. And I've tested, just out of my own curiosity, I've tested with other people who see the photo and they say, oh, I think that's that and that's that. I'll tell them the 5 words and ask them to match them up, and they do.
So that must have been incredibly fascinating.
It was really fascinating and really rewarding. That was a fun project.
How big were the knives?
Ranging from about, yeah, they're all close. I wanted to make them a similar size so no one felt like they got more or less, so you know, that kind of thing. But they're about 8 or 9 inches total.
So you're going to be here all week at the Craftsman's Fair for all 9 days, your booth, so people can come and find your booth.
Yep, I'm in tent 5, booth 501.
Okay, and there's things that they can buy and they can place orders.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my work ends up being custom. People order something specific and I'll make it to spec, but I do have knives available for sale as well.
Well, great. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When we return, I'll be joined by Joe Farshaw, who's a pewtersmith, so please stay with us.